Hey Pops, I'm responding to your email link regarding the Bonhoeffer guy regarding cognitive dissonance and the power of stupidity. I was unaware that he was in a plot to assassinate Hitler. I do know that there's another guy who's famous. Tom Cruise did a movie about him who also got caught. He almost got Hitler too. Hitler, according to the story in the movie, the Tom Cruise guy, I can't think of his name. Uh, Hitler was in his bunker somewhere in some Wolfenstein place, and the bomb was next to Hitler. But it was so hot in there, the guy looked down and saw it was just a briefcase, and he moved it over to the right like a little bit, enough that Hitler got the explosion, but it wasn't enough to kill him. So it's the Tom Cruise movie. It was pretty good. Bonhoeffer, which I do want to see, I haven't seen it yet. It's on YouTube. I'll attach the link to the video regarding the power of stupidity. The Milgram experiment link is the one I've heard about this before. I was listening to a guy talking about the CIA government signed up for an experiment done by Stanley Milgram. And there's no confirmation the CIA was involved, by the way. But we do know Stanley Milgram did do an experiment. He would have a person sitting in another room, and there would be wires hooked up to him. And he would invite people to come in there. And I think Stanley wore a doctor's coat, that white coat. And he would tell the people, say, listen, so every time he says like a wrong answer, press this button and it'll give him a little shock. And each time he gets a shock, turn it up. And so now it wasn't connected. So the guy, they would press the button and a little like light would go on. He'd go like this, and he would know each time the light would go on, they would be turning up the intensity. And during this experiment, you can look this up. About after 4 or 5 turn-ups, you started to hear him start screaming, right? And I think even Stanley Milgram said, I think he has a mild heart condition. Please continue. It's okay. It's okay. And they kept continuing on. And the point was is that people, no matter how bad the guy was in there screaming, they would still listen to the power of authority, or as I think the guy in the philosophical put, the power of tribal. He put it in a way about tribal, not intellectual understanding or curiosity, or even the ability to understand how to respond in this situation, but they resort to just the power of authority. And if they're not taught to question authority thoroughly now and move from there. So I won't go into too much more detail. I'm starting to forget how the whole video went. But that was the Stanley Milgram experiment. Very interesting experiment. They also, I think when they were arresting and they were getting all the German soldiers, when they were killing the Jewish people or any civilian or any type of religious people, I think, or any black people or Polish people, they just said they were just obeying orders. And it really puts that they didn't realize how bad it was, and it just shows that humans in the right conditions will just do what they're told because they're not taught to question, which is a big deal in our society today. I watched The Atheist Experience, or another call-in show called The Line, another one called Talk Heathen, and then there's another one called Chewed Gum. It's with two girls on it, and then there's another one. There's like 5 or 6 of these call-in shows. So they're all atheists, and they all have a specialty in the field. One's a biologist. One is just most of them, some of them are former pastors. And another one, his name is Aaron Ra, Aron Ra. He changed his last name, but his name is Aaron Ra. He's a biologist, and he's well studied in biology and evolutionary theory. And he handles phone calls in from, they call them believers, or people who are Christian. Most of them get Christian. Sometimes you get some Muslims in there. Sometimes you just get people who are religious. So, which means they'll lean to their religion, and of course they'll talk about Jesus, but they're more just religious. I had to check myself on that one, but what I'm trying to say is they'll defend this belief, even though there's no evidence for God. None. There's none. All the gods ever created by man, there's no evidence for. And the Exodus, they've looked for evidence of the Exodus with the late tools we have. I think in the last 50 years, there's nothing there. There's no evidence of the Exodus at all. The only thing in the book of the Exodus is that there is a place called Egypt, and I think Egypt wrote down that there was about 800 or so Hebrews had lived there for about 800 years. That's all the connection they have of that Exodus story. And to make a quick note on that, I'm already 5 minutes in. To make a quick note on that, the Exodus with with the 10 plagues, the 10 Commandments, the Ark, the 600,000 slave population that gets pulled out of Egypt, that God tells Moses and Aaron to pull out of Egypt. And and of course it ends up being around between 600,000 to 2 million people, because they have families and older, younger people. So there's the slave population of Hebrews plus their families. So it ends up being between 600,000 and 2 million. There's nothing in the Egyptian records about that at all. And the Egyptians were pretty good at documenting stuff. They were actually one of the best cultures of all time for documenting most of their history. And there's nothing. They don't document any, like a 10 plague attack, which they would have, because it killed, the 10th plague was murdering. God supposedly murdered all the firstborn children. Interestingly enough, a firstborn children still can be a grown man or a grown woman. If the parents are still alive, that would be considered a firstborn child. So they would have put that on record. They would have put on record a bunch of other stuff about the interactions. The fact that they lost their 600,000 slave population plus the extras, the other family members and whatnot, for the Hebrews to be pulled out of there. Their economy would have been destroyed, right? I mean, destroyed. Especially back in that time when they heavily relied on the slave population for their economy and their work. I mean, back in the day, from what we know about history, all the nations, all the states, all the cities, all the tribal people heavily used slavery. So, that just being a little note there. You can do some more research on that if you want. The point to what I was is I've been working on that too. I talked to this about you when we went out to eat. We were at the Atlantis, and I asked you about. I have a kind of a little model I'm putting together about discussion. Was it discussion, debate, conversation? There's 5 parts to it. Anyways, a presentation, and then there's I think a 5th one, like making small little video shorts, or having interviews or something. There's 5 parts. This is my little model I'm building. It just helps me understand that when I enter into a conversation, how to know I'm in a conversation, how to know the difference between a debate and a conversation. And they can move, by the way. You can enter a conversation, they can switch to a debate. That's just going into the fact I'm trying to categorize and break things down so I get a better angle on it. You commented back to me is that during a presentation, you could actually pick people from the crowd. So that way you can have a presentation and you can call on people. So to involve audience involvement, which is good. I lean that more on discussion. Like I would like open with a theme. I give like a 10-minute presentation on whatever I wanted to talk about, and then I would answer questions. This is just my own categorization of what I call discussion, presentation, conversation, debate. And there's another one. But that gives the gist. So it's funny that you had sent that, the power of stupidity. And those call-in shows, it shows the cognitive dissonance, which means, I think it means you're insisting on something that you believe to be true even though it's false. And you're unwilling to accept evidence laid before you, or even to challenge your belief systems. So I've been seeing a lot of people call in on that. Most of them are religious, and most of them insist on things, and they're even unwilling to engage in conversation to check their beliefs. And I'll end with that. So thanks for that. I've been getting a lot of that lately on the atheist call-in shows. It's been very, very eye-opening and educational. Oh, education. That's another model. So, yes, I could add to it more. I could spend another 20 minutes discussing my thoughts on why people in Germany at that time. And this happens everywhere. So it's kind of a nuanced perspective as it goes into people about Trump. Trump is what you would classify as a cult leader. He's a personality leader. And a lot of people who like Trump, they like him just because he's Trump. You can't talk bad about him, right? You can't, till they believe that he's going to solve all the issues, as he said he would in some ways. And so people who are Trumpers are also people who do this. They have a cognitive dissonance in them. And I backed away from that. I did vote for, I remember I asked you to vote for Trump. I did back away from that, but I've been questioning almost everything since I became an atheist. It's a little bit scary, actually, and a little bit revealing. I could go in more details of that if you want. So I hope this was just a little bit of my input. Sorry. I was just hoping to get a little bit of my input to you on the link you sent. I'll be listening to more of his because he was on point on most of what he said. There's a couple of things he said I still have to think about. But most of what he said, right? Approaching things with curiosity and the mindset of exploration. It's okay to be wrong, right? A little saying I came up with yesterday on my own. I never want to be wrong, so show me where I'm wrong. Right? Uh, Aiming to be accurate with details. Let's talk about the details and question the details thoroughly. So they're testable and they're failable. There's a scientific thing. Any person's belief or any person's idea needs to have a condition where it can fail, right? So it has to be failable. There's a saying there. You might know that because you're pretty bright sometimes. I liked what you said in the car when we were going up there, that ice cube in the pool thing. You had more to it. I don't remember everything you said, but I did listen to a part of it, and I was like, I haven't put that together that way before. So there's some good stuff rolling around in there. So I appreciate the video. I probably will listen to more of his philosophical stuff, and this is just my response to it. Okay? All right, Dad. You know it's all good. They say think, right? Think, and it's okay to be wrong. And I don't think our family line, we're not taught how to be wrong, which is incredibly important because we're wrong a lot. Or if we're not wrong, at least we're not right, because there is a distinction there. And if you ever want to get into that, we can discuss further on that. So even though if you're not wrong, you're at least not right. All right? Hasta luego.